Hey, lovely YouTube people. It's time for a quick plant haul and orchid update. It's been a busy couple of months for me, so I certainly haven't indulged in my plant therapy as often as I would like to. But over the course of the last month, I did pick up 5 new plants that I'm very excited about, and some of my orchids have just opened up, and in the few minutes that I do have at home on occasion, I just look at and love. So without further ado, we will start with the new plants. I'm going to start with the two little ones. These are both 2-inch pots, and at my favorite plant store, Amelia Smarty Plants. These each were $2.95. The first one that I'm going to show you is a philodendron. This is one of the rubber plants. I believe this is the Prince of Orange. When the pots are this small, they don't label them, so I kind of have to do my own labeling, but here we go. How cute is that? I love rubber plants, but they tend to be so big that I can't indulge in my different getting a variety of them. So all I have is the burgundy. But when I saw this little pot, I couldn't resist, and so there you have it. I believe this is the Prince of Orange. The next plant that I'm going to show you is another one of my little 2-inch pots. This again, let's see if we can focus that. I didn't know what the species was when I got it, but I loved how it kind of trailed, and that design on the leaves is just so pretty. I did end up identifying that its name escapes me at the moment, but I will put it on the screen above. And it's actually in the 2 weeks that I've had it, has almost doubled in length. So I'm going to get it into a bigger pot and just see what it does. So those were my two little $2 and change plants. The other 3 plants that I got are these 3. We've got this pretty little Peperomia. This, I believe, is the Rana Verde. This is the newest addition to my collection. I haven't yet had a chance to get it into a pot. You can see it was $4.50, which I thought, for the size of a plant and how healthy and full that it looks, that was a great deal. And so with great pleasure, I add another Peperomia to my collection. And hopefully today I'll be able to get that in a pot of its own. Probably the biggest indulgence that I've made this last month is this charmer here. How beautiful is that? This is one of the true Aralias. I do have a false Aralia, the crested, in my collection. So this is my first true Aralia. I believe that the varietal name of this is Snowcap. But I will make sure and I will put it on the screen above. But how beautiful is this? It's so structural and full and lacy, parsley-like. I just cannot wait to see how this one grows up. Like I said, this was probably my biggest indulgence. I ended up getting it at Amelia's, I can't remember exactly. I think it was $18 and change. I don't know for sure. Not as much as I like to usually spend on plants, but I could not resist. So that is my new pride in my collection. And then the last new plant that I've gotten over the last month or so is this beauty. From a distance, it doesn't look too impressive. I actually had to cut it back a lot. Some vermins were eating at it at the store. But you can see I've got a ton of new sprouts coming up. And the reason I got this is take a look at that variegation. How gorgeous is that? This is a Boston fern. I believe this is the tiger stripe Boston fern. When I saw this sitting very lonely on the tucked away in the far corner of the nursery, just neglected, I could not resist. I had to get it. When I took it up to the counter to pay for it, the owner of the nursery was shocked that I was getting it. He said that people often think that it's sickly because of the yellowy, and they don't look closely enough to see the beauty in its leaves. And he actually offered to let me take several for the price of one. And I was very much tempted. How beautiful is that? Oh, I was very tempted to take them up on the offer. But as you can see, my space is quite limited in terms of areas to grow plants, so I ended up declining his offer, but I shared it with a bunch of other people who love plants in this area, and hopefully the plants will find good homes. I could not fit it. I would not have any room. I don't have room for this one, but we make room when we find new green babies that we love. We make room for them. And speaking of which, some of my more showy green babies are right here. I brought these in from my patio. These are my orchids in bloom. I didn't bring in my Philodendron orchids. I have enough of those, and you've seen them in previous videos. But I did bring in some of the what I think are the more unusual varieties. I am not an expert when it comes to orchids. In fact, I am so amateur when it comes to orchids, I don't even know the names of a lot of these. I just think they're pretty and they look beautiful. I love sitting out on my patio and enjoying a cup of coffee in the morning, just surrounded by these beauties. The first one that I'm going to show you is this darling, charming little thing. I do have tags for most of these, and I will show you here. This one, I did buy, I believe I got this at a box store months ago, last autumn at some point. It did not have the flower spike, so it was a surprise, but because of that, it was quite inexpensive. I think it was $5 or $7. And soon after I got it, a little spike started to grow, and then recently it just opened up into this. Oh, that pink, that orange, it's just such a unique, pretty, charming little combination. I love this flower. I love this orchid. I'm really hopeful that I can keep it alive and have new spikes grow over the years. So that's number one. Number two that I'm going to show you is one that I got about 3 months ago. I went to a little orchid nursery in part of the rural area of South Florida, about 40 minutes west of Miami. There's this little nursery that I go to that's just in the middle of nowhere. I've got to cross a rickety old bridge to get to it. There's no parking. I have to park by the canal on like between the little road and the canal, but they just have the most unusual orchids, and the prices are, they can't be beat. I got this slipper orchid there a few months ago. When I bought it, it did have the flower stalk on it, but none of the buds had come, and as you can see, it's since opened. It's yellow. I don't have a yellow slipper orchid. I have a few other varieties that aren't in bloom. Hopefully over the next year or so I'll get flower spikes on those. So this is the only one that I have in bloom. We've got one of the blooms starting to fade here. And let me see if I can focus this. Does not want to focus. There we go. And then you can see here that there's another one coming. But how pretty is that? I don't have this in the right medium. I've been terrible and haven't replaced it. I have it in a more epiphyte medium, and it needs something like a peat moss to hold in moisture. So I've had a double of a time keeping it wet enough. My day off today, I plan to exchange it out into something more like the moss here. This is the cross of this one. And you can see that it's not doing so bad, and that I do have new growth here. So hopefully these leaves will perk up a little bit. But how pretty is that? Very pretty. The next two I'm going to show you are my dendrobiums. These both were at box stores. This one you had seen in a previous video. At the time, only one of the blossoms had been open. Since then, they all have just opened up and are quite showy. It is really, really happy. You can see I've got a couple of new growths coming in here. This was a box store find, so I'm not sure what the varietal is. To be honest, I don't care. I just like the prettiness of the blossoms. And then the other dendrobium I have is here. This is probably the most subtly pretty of the orchids I have in my collection. It's just a pretty little like pinkish or creamish green base with the lavender tips. This one has been blooming forever, probably for a good 3 months. Definitely was patient enough to keep those blooms so I can show you all of my blooming orchids in one go. This too is really healthy, really likes the humidity out on my patio. And then the last orchid that I have to show you is this one. To be honest, I don't know what this Bilra species is. It's one of the orchids that's got the really fat bulbous bases. And this is the only orchid that I actually bought still in bloom. I tend not to buy orchids in bloom. They tend to be more expensive when they're like that, and that I am always disappointed with how short the lifespan of the flowers are. But this one, these flowers, I couldn't resist. I spent way too much money on it. I think it was actually over $20. It might have been $21 or $22 at one of the box stores. But I had a really hard day at work, and I needed some plant therapy, and the box store I went to was the only one that was open in the area, and there just weren't any interesting houseplants that I felt that I could squeeze room in my apartment for. And when I saw this, I was like, that's it. That's my therapy for the day. And so I spent money that I shouldn't have on it, and I have not regretted it for a minute because it is gorgeous. So there you have it, my new orchids, or not new orchids, but orchids in bloom that enable me to enjoy my morning coffee before work. And then a cat, my new plant finds. So thank you so much everybody for watching and allowing me to share my my little beautiful green babies, and I hope you all have a lovely day.